I'm honoured to meet both of you. It's not often that young ladies of your age and beauty are concerned or interested in me these days, I can assure you.
Len, could you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
And I was born in Liverpool in 1920. And at that time, in 1920 and 30, the whole of the British Isles were suffering from a depression similar to the one that you are suffering here today. So there was difficulty in finding employment, and when I was at school I finished as a head boy, and at that time there were no A levels or O levels. There was the school certificate, and if you passed the school certificate you then went on not to university but to the grammar school. And I passed the school certificate, but my father, who was in the Merchant Navy, they were very poorly paid at the time and there was a depression on. So my mother said to me, "I'm sorry, we can't afford to send you to the grammar school. It'll cost too much for books, uniforms and all the rest." She said, "You have two choices. One is to go to the technical college and learn a trade, or two, you can go out to work." So I decided for me the best thing I could do would be to go out to work. So at 14 I went out to work, and I was very lucky to obtain a job as an office boy in a shipping firm in Liverpool who supplied ships. And from then on I was earning a wage. But the first wage I had was a very good wage at the time, 7 and 6 per week. And I started work at 7 o'clock in the morning and we finished at 5. But in those days we worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday morning. So the only weekends that we had were Saturday afternoon and Sunday. And I was very happy there because I was on and off ships all day for various tasks. So I was quite content to be in that job. My father was in the Merchant Navy and he crossed the Atlantic many times during the early stages of the war when ships were being torpedoed. And I know my mother worried about this because she never knew when he left home to go on another voyage whether she would see him again. But he was very lucky. He did survive the war, unlike many of his friends who I knew because they used to come to the house if they were on leave at the same time as he was. So that was it. I was very happy in my work. I loved working with ships, and so it went on.
What happened to you at the start of the war?
I was called up in 1940 and I was sent off to be trained as a soldier, and eventually I went to a seaside resort in North Wales, which had once been a holiday camp, and did all my basic army training. During that time, I frequently made application to be transferred to the Navy, but they said, no chance, you're in the army and that's where you stay. So I was sent after my training to be trained as a wireless operator in the Royal Signals, and I did my training at a GPO wireless school in Sheffield, and eventually passed out as a qualified wireless operator. And then we were told during the week notices would go up to tell us where we were going to be sent to start our army career. But in the meantime, purely by chance, a notice went up on the wall saying soldiers are invited to make application to join either the commandos or combined operations. And it was explained that because you put your name down, you wouldn't necessarily go where you were, where you had chosen. So I then waited with trepidation to see what would happen. And a miracle happened. I was posted to combined operations, which suited me fine, because I knew combined operations involved the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, so I would have some connection with the sea and the Navy. So we were sent on 7 days leave, and then I was told to report to the rail transport officer at Greenock for onward routing to the Combined Operations Training Centre at Inveraray in Scotland. And there were one or two other souls there, and we were put in the back of a 3-tonner and taken to this large camp at Inveraray, which was mostly composed of naval personnel and army personnel and a few RAF. And there we were trained with combined ops to do all sorts of things like night assaults by landing craft on beaches, scale cliffs, or whatever we had to get up after the beach, and that went on until we were proficient in doing this. We got used to being taken out and going ashore in landing craft and being landed on all sorts of beaches and places in the night. So then, having completed training, we then went back to the main camp, and I was posted to a signals unit there. Well, that was quite interesting really, because it was something which was different from the ordinary army training, and it was specialised. And I had a reasonably cushy job there eventually. I was placed in charge of what were called the SDO, the Signals Dispatch Office. And there we had wireless operators, dispatch riders, and I wish I could remember, there was no computers in those days. There was, what did they call them? Teleprinters. Thank you. And we had a teleprinter operator with us there. But it was a sort of 24-hour job. During the night, one of us would have to man the wireless set. The teleprinter operator actually was on his own. So it fell to me, I was then a Lance Corporal, to learn how to operate the teleprinter. Well, that was fairly easy for me because I could already type, having done that when I was first started work. And if he was called out in the night, and then he was called out again, I used to go out and do the teleprinter. But there was no skill really in that. It was just knowing the procedure to adopt and how to do it. Anyway, I was then sent to what was called a stone frigate. That was a naval base which was called HMS Dundonald, but it wasn't a ship, it was a base where people were trained for various parts of the naval work. And goodness knows, I might have been there all my army career, I suppose, except that there was an outfit I'd never heard of called Phantom, who were a wireless communications outfit, who were going out to North Africa. And they had asked for half a dozen assault-trained wireless operators. And of course, lucky me, instead of having this cushy job, I was transferred temporarily to them. And from then on, they said they were going out to North Africa, so we got another 7 days embarkation leave, and were told to, when the leave was over, to report to Greenock in Scotland, where we would be joining this unit. And so I did. When I got there, I was told that we were going to be taken out by a trawler and landed on a ship which would be taking us out to the Middle East. And it was very interesting to me, because this was not a naval ship as such, though it was HMS. It was a peacetime liner which had been brought over from New Zealand and had been adapted as a special headquarters ship for any landings. They would work with the people ashore, and it would be the command post at sea. So this was very interesting to me because I went aboard, and it was called HMS Bulolo, and talking to the lads on the ship, they said, we think we're going to do a landing somewhere, but we don't know where it is. So at that time, bearing combined ops flashes on our shoulders, when we went aboard, we were taken in charge by the bosun and allocated to one of what they call the watches. There was port watch and starboard watch, and we were posted to one of these watches. I was in the starboard watch, much to the annoyance of the army, who didn't want somebody removed from their discipline at that time. So from then on, I was in the starboard watch, and I worked mostly with the sailors, and the ship then sailed, and we were told we were going out to North Africa, but we would be going round the Cape because it was too dangerous to take us through the Mediterranean. So we set off, and away we went. And it turned out that we were to be one of the escorts, because she was classed by then as an armed merchant cruiser. And we went out as an escort to a great number of troop ships which were also going out to North Africa. And of course the escort consisted of destroyers, one or two cruisers, because it was a very valuable convoy.
Where did you stop on your route to South Africa?
Freetown, Sierra Leone. And there we took on supplies, and we were allowed shore leave there. So we stayed there for about 4 or 5 days, I think. And every other day we managed to get ashore, which was very interesting to me because, you know, it was a foreign country, and it was most interesting because I, in my work with this firm of ship suppliers, we used to send stuff out there on a monthly basis to people who were out there. So it was very, very interesting to see the place that we had been sending stuff to actually there. And then, after about 4 or 5 days, the convoy reassembled, and actually the troops had been allowed a day ashore there as well to stretch their legs. We set off in a convoy again, and we went south round the Horn of Africa, Cape Town. Now some of the ships were discharged at Cape Town to let the troops go ashore and refuel, and we were sent round the Cape, and we were taken and docked at Durban. which was a beautiful city. And while we were there, we were allowed ashore with the watch every other day, and it was great to see these places that I'd only heard about when I was a lad from my dad, who actually used to go to all these places in East Africa after they had finished the convoys in the Atlantic. And then after I think we had about a week there, and they were very hospitable. Every day down on the docks would be a load of civilian cars with families from Durban in who were looking to take one or two of the boys off the ship and give them a day out. And it was an excellent opportunity to talk to the people of Durban about the war, and they were anxious to know what it was like in Britain at that time. And an interesting thing occurred there. There was a lady who was world famous, and I forget her name, but she used to get on the end of the last pier before ships left. And as they went out, she would sing Land of Hope and Glory. But I think it might have been Nellie Melba, but that to me is a bit doubtful. However, while I was in Durban, an incident occurred which was, it turned out to my advantage in the end. When you went ashore in the army, you had a pass. In the Navy, the system was different. You had a liberty ticket, and as a combined ops bloke who had been working with a crew, I went ashore, but what happened was you handed in your liberty ticket to the officer of the watch when you went ashore, so he knew who was ashore and you collected it when you came back. But while in Durban, an MP stopped me and asked me for my pass. So I explained I hadn't got a pass, that I was part of the ship's company and I had a liberty ticket. And he wouldn't believe it. So I said to him, well, ring up the ship was connected up. Oh, he wouldn't do that. So I was taken to the police station, put in a cell, and I spent the night in there until the next morning. I complained so much about them not taking me back to the ship to check this, that they said, right, we will do that. So they took me on the back of a motorbike back to the ship. Now, it was custom when you went aboard a naval ship, you always faced aft and saluted the quarterdeck. So I said to this sergeant, don't forget when you get to the top of the gangway, face aft and salute the quarterdeck. Well, he just ignored it. So as soon as he stepped on the deck, that man, come here! And he had to explain himself. So I then went to the officer of the watch and said, I've been in jail all night because they won't accept the fact that I haven't got a pass because I am considered to be part of the ship's company. So the officer of the watch said to this sergeant, I want you to put this man on the back of your motorbike and take him and drop him off in Durban where you picked him up. Well, as it happened, I got an extra day's leave out of that because I got another day in Durban till I had to come back. And that was the end of that incident.
The most important incident in the war for you was Operation Luyten. Can you explain a bit about that, please?
Well, I'll skip very quickly over several months that happened after I was landed in North Africa. It turned out that we were to be used for the invasion of Sicily. And when that was over, I was sent to Malta to await a convoy which never came, and from then on I was sent to North Africa and taken by cattle truck and army transport across the North African coast to Algiers, which was in French North Africa. And then quickly again sent home on a troop ship, HMS Samaria, and was sent to Richmond in Surrey to await the next move.